I think they're mistaken. And yet, in my experience, this list doesn't even come close to explaining why so many men try so hard to get into the college these days. Many apply to the college, sweat heavily as they write their timed application essays, and more still when they're seated for their interview. They search, understandably, with few clues for what they think the college wants to hear. W, however, did not sweat. He didn't slouch, he didn't squirm, he didn't confront me, and he didn't try to charm. In fact, he could barely speak. His mouth was parched, and he tried to moisten his lips without success. He spoke in measured and cumbersome tones, as if his words were being dislodged, one at a time. When he did speak, I heard a mid-Atlantic working-class white accent that reminded me very much of my mom's. As he forced himself through the interview, halting, restrained, self-censored, he made a very unconvincing case for admission. I was struck that morning, as I often am, by the contrast between his barely competent application essay and his extreme reticence at the interview and what seemed to be a very real, even desperate desire to get in. His stillness indicated not composure, to me, but an almost violent effort at self-control. What was he holding back? I knew his face, as well as his file from the previous 2 years. Yet again, he was one of 100 men competing for 15 spots. Yet again, he had written a lackluster essay, more functionally literate than most, but devoid of content. Yet again, he was among the 40 to get an interview, and once again, he seemed on track to be denied. A fan whirred loudly in the corner, drowning out our voices, barely moving the heavy air. Noises from the yard ricocheted in through the armored casement windows and rattled the naked walls. He took a breath. He broke off. I had never wanted anything like this. I heard those words often. I tried to discount the fact that coming from him that morning, they sounded more grave and desperately compelling than usual. Mr. W, I said, it's clear you want this, and that matters a lot to us. We don't want to waste the opportunity that's precious on someone who doesn't really give a damn, on someone not really interested in doing the work. Your sincerity, the strength of your desire, that can carry you a long way. The college is really hard, and most people might not have your kind of determination to manage, to push ahead with the work, and succeed. I stopped and waited. At the very least, I hope to give him a moment's break from the burden of performing or failing to perform, to take a breath and collect his thoughts under the cover of someone else's chatter. I continue. But wanting it badly, really badly, can't be, or let's say isn't in our case enough, all that we consider. Let's assume many guys want it badly, and that all of them are more or less sincere. Sincerity isn't, of course, primary as far as I'm concerned. Just someone who will make the most of the opportunity in a way that roughly coincides with the work of the college. I kept on talking, but to myself I said, and what is the work of the college? Also, I went on, for us to decide on the basis of someone saying they really want it, imagine, the judge who wants it more, based on what they can say convincingly, under conditions such as these. He nodded. Look, I said, people can simply write their way into the college, just on the strength of their essay alone. That's because reading those texts, those prompts, writing those essays in response, that sort of thing actually stands pretty well for a lot of what we actually do most of the time. More silence. Your essay, W, as you probably kind of know, showed that you might be able to do that kind of work. That's why you keep getting interviews. They sort of show it, but you're not offering us much beyond that. Writing like that, reading like that, it's a really hard thing to do. It's a practice by which, it's a habit and an actual skill. What you do with your mind and your heart when you really read someone else, what it takes to move your thoughts and feelings into writing, none of that is natural. It doesn't come naturally. You have to learn how to do it. Your essay has promise. It's gotten you the interview. Again, like last time. The last 2 times, he interrupted. His smile mixed self-criticism with a note of accusation. Surely there was much, he might say, accusing us of being inscrutable in our demands, opaque in our preferences, capricious in our decisions. I waited, hoping he might say more. He did not. Obviously, I went on, spaces in the college at Eastern are scarce. I interrupted myself at that point. I hate it when people in a position of authority invoke scarcity to justify their actions. It's cowardly and dishonest. In fact, I was going to form a judgment and make a decision, both of which would be my own. And of course, if scarcity were a first principle, we wouldn't be sitting there in a maximum security prison trying to run a first-rate liberal arts college. Scarcity is the beginning of justice, Hume had said. I always knew that was deeply wrong. Very compelling and deeply wrong. I tried again. W, if we had 20 great candidates, we'd find a way to take them all. We should have such problems. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. The group of us that reads the essay, there's a whole crew of us on campus. As you know, each of us reads each of these essays. 5 people reading 200, ranking them in private, discussing them around the table. Well, it's a chore. Anyway, we can usually agree on 2 or 3 that seem really ready, or really promising, or really worth the risk. We ask ourselves, is this person really reading the text? Do they understand it? Can they pay attention really to the words of the author before them? Do they write something in response that is insightful or attentive? If they misinterpret, is their misinterpretation interesting? Can they write a solid sentence? What does syntax indicate? That sort of thing. But really, beyond several essays out of the 200, it's all guesswork. And nobody agrees on the second group of 3 or the third group. And so we have these interviews. The point is just to give you an extra chance to say something relevant or interesting or insightful about the text maybe, about college, about reading, about the jails. God knows it can be easier to talk than to write. He nodded gravely. I was talking plenty, stuff I heard myself say 100 times before, and we were getting nowhere. He tried again to moisten his lips. Right, so we understand that the college may be a mystery to you. You haven't been to one before you got your GDE inside. That's fine. Coming to college is supposed to be a discovery, finding out what it is and how it might matter to you. That was too much even for me to handle, and I shut up. But he nodded slightly, listening intently, and waited. Then he broke in. They have... I waited. He was censoring himself again. I took a tiny risk and said, look, W, you've got nothing to lose. I don't work here. Just speak your mind. And then he either found the right words or just decided to say them. They have their own ideas about rehabilitation. I looked him in the eye. Well, finally, we were on to something. Who are they? I asked. He paused and he said, yes. Again, he licked his lips without effect. Yes, I can see why you would ask me that, he said. It sounds like I mean the whole world when I say they. But by they, he went on, I mean the people here who run this place, the officers, the staff. He continued, I suppose it's also a way of referring not just to this or that person, but to the system. And he made that gesture. And he smiled. Fascinating, I said, yes. You know, that reminds me, I once asked a student who they were. And he said, well, when I was growing up, it was everybody beyond 55th and Flatbush. And so I asked him, and he said that, I said, who is it now? And he was quite sober, and he said, the prison. So yes, W, people use the word they all the time. It indicates the things we take for granted, the relationships that we're in that we take for granted. W nodded and added, you can tell where a man thinks he is, where he thinks he can go, and where he can't. We had struck, it seemed, on Ward's subject. So you say you have your own ideas of rehabilitation? You're expected to be obedient, he said, not just to conform, I mean, not just to, follow the basic rules of living, to try and make yourself a better person, whatever they think that means. But I kept my silence and he continued. What do they really want from us in here? I mean, the way it plays out every day, year after year, it's not about change. It's not about living different, finding out how you can live for the first time in your life, who you should be. He paused. It's about them getting you to do what they say while they have the power. It became, for the first time, easy to look at him. And as part of the shift between us, I felt at ease sitting in front of him for the first time, representing the college, empowered to make a decision about admission without embarrassment. He had taken the risk of saying what he actually thought, and we were having a conversation. It's not about anything in here, it's not corrections, that's what they call it. It's not. And he stopped himself again. I guess that the missing word he had halted in front of was rehabilitation. He didn't want to utter it again. It was a word, it seemed, he had not yet handed over to them, and one that, unlike corrections, he wasn't yet comfortable consigning to spare quotes to mere irony. Perhaps the clinical tone of the term repulsed him. Perhaps it referred to something he still desired and found degraded in their hands. That's what it means to them, he added, referring to what seemed the conversation he had just then carried on in silence, just as I had. I need to. My life, in college, can be different. He put the pieces out there, but he didn't string them together. It's a different way, not their way, something else. Of course I need it. Look at me. I know it could. I was tempted to encourage him and put him at ease. He had put his finger on something that I had for a long time thought but never stood out to myself clearly. But I said nothing. I've never put myself out there, he said, and fell silent. We had come full circle. Yeah, I think I'll just stop there.